So the subject of today's session is, why is the Bhagavad Gita the core text of Sanatana Dharma? If you were to have only one book that we must study, if we want to call ourselves citizens of this nation, then that one text that we should follow is the Bhagavad Gita. So the Bhagavad Gita has been variously promoted and affirmed by various people as the one textbook of Hinduism. And that if you know the Bhagavad Gita, you know Hinduism. If you don't know Bhagavad Gita, you don't know Hinduism. And as you can see, most people in the country do not know Bhagavad Gita, at least the way they should. The Bhagavad Gita is a very unique book because, according to the Bhagavad Gita itself, it is the word of God. In the Bhagavad Gita, God himself personally speaks to his devotee, Arjuna. When Arjuna is in a state of nervous collapse, when he is confused, bewildered, stricken by the fear of the karmic burden he will bring upon himself when he fights the battle of Kurukshetra. And while Krishna is reciting to Arjuna the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, you should understand that at the same time, this Krishna-Arjuna dialogue is but the portal to a far more intellectually significant world beneath. And why do I say it is a portal to a far more significant intellectual world beneath? Because the Bhagavad Gita encapsulates all the Astika philosophies. There were many philosophies that have been present on this continent. So we must first define Hinduism. Hinduism may be defined as the commonwealth of religions that have taken birth on this subcontinent. So when we say that it's a commonwealth of religions that have taken birth on the subcontinent, that means all religions that have taken birth in India, all religions that have taken birth south of the Sindhu River are part of Hindu culture and religion. Therefore, we have not one religion, but we have a commonwealth of religions. Just like in the Silicon Valley, they have what they call as a startup culture, where n number of startups are encouraged, some of them becoming unicorns. So also, this subcontinent of India was the one place in the world where it was a hotbed of startup religions. Anyone could start a religion without fear of being accused of blasphemy. Anyone could start a new religion without fear of being slaughtered. or ostracized. And if they found enough followers, then that religion became a unicorn. So many religions have taken birth on this soil, this holy and sanctified soil. So many religions have taken birth. And the scriptures say, Ekam Sat, there is only one truth. Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. There is only one truth, and the wise men say there are many paths to that truth. And therefore, Hinduism is not one religion, it is a commonwealth of many religions. Even as there were many religions, we have to understand the context, the historical context wherein the battle of Kurukshetra took place. We have to become aware of what were the social challenges, not just the challenges to the Pandavas or the Kauravas, but what were the social challenges that were prevalent at that time. Then you can understand why the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, not just for the benefit of Arjun, but to bring clarity to the people of this nation. And Krishna, when he speaks and summarizes, he synthesizes, he syncretizes all the Astika religions that were prevalent and still are prevalent at this time. So, by Astika philosophies, we mean philosophies that follow the Vedas, whereas Gnostic philosophies are those which do not follow the Vedas. Now, Bhagavad Gita is a compendium of Astika philosophies. And not just does it bring about all the Astika philosophies together, but also it is a polemical work. It criticizes those who follow the Gnostic philosophies. So much so as saying that the followers of the Astic philosophies are divine and the followers of the Gnostic philosophies are demonic. The Astic philosophies, 6 of them, are called darshanas. They are all a perspective. They are all a form of philosophy that looks upon the Vedas with a particular perspective in philosophy. These 6 philosophies are Sankhya, not the atheistic Sankhya, which has found some purchase in the minds of academicians, but it is a theistic Sankhya, which believes in God or the Supreme Purush. Yoga, and by yoga, this is not about Patanjali's yoga, nor is it about the postural yoga, which is perhaps a derivative of Swedish gymnastics. And Patanjali was far later than the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. This is about Yagna Valkya's yoga. Then Nyaya or logic, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, Vedanta. While most of the time the Bhagavad Gita is touted and declared as the ultimate in Vedanta, and of course it is the ultimate in all the six darshanas, Vedanta does not have that much content in the Bhagavad Gita. Most of what Krishna describes as jnana is really derived from Sankhya. And to understand this requires a study of the Sankhya Karika and several other Sankhya texts to understand why the Bhagavad Gita seems odd at times when you're trying to superimpose a Vedantic structure on it. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks largely of Sankhya and then later subsumes it to an all-encompassing Vedanta. The Gnostic philosophies are Charvaka philosophy, Ajivika philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, and Jain philosophy. So these philosophies are only mentioned to be condemned. So we have to understand that the Bhagavad Gita is not containing one philosophy, but the Bhagavad Gita is a synthesis of philosophies. And not only is it a synthesis of philosophies, but indeed it beautifully weaves together apparently contrary philosophies and brings about harmony between them. And even as it brings about a harmony between various philosophies, what it does is that it brings about a beautiful harmony around the personhood of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. So the Bhagavad Gita is not just old, it is very old. Old enough that there is often various people trying to date it and everyone coming up with the wrong answers. But you can find that the Bhagavad Gita predates Buddhism. And of course, because Buddha and Mahavir lived at the same time, not far from each other, Bhagavad Gita predated Buddhism as well as Jainism. But yet, Buddhism and Jainism are not original in the fullest sense, because both of them are drawn from a philosophy known as Shramana philosophy. And Shramana philosophies were these proto-Buddhist, proto-Jain philosophy, which was widespread. It was atheistical. It did not believe in God. Just like Buddhists do not believe in God, or Jains do not believe in God. So it was atheistical. It was anti, it was, shall we say, a pacifist philosophy. It was against all forms of violence. And to impose this philosophy of non-violence, it largely depended upon the philosophy of karma. And this law of karma which was propounded by the Shramana philosophies, was the danda with which everyone was terrified. Kshatriyas were so terrified of incurring bad karma that they were renouncing their kingdoms, giving up their duties as kings, no longer protecting their borders, no longer protecting the populace from bandits and robbers, and concerned with selfish salvation. Why selfish salvation? They were concerned with their own salvation. The rest of the world, they were not bothered about. So it was selfishly salvation centric. Why do we say selfishly salvation centric? It is selfishly salvation centric because they're concerned with their own salvation and they are not concerned with the rest of the world or society. Non-violent, and therefore without violence, the borders of the nation and borders of their kingdoms were opened to all kinds of invaders. And you can see that the Bhagavad Gita predicted that this would happen by putting Arjun in that quandary. Because Arjun is worried about the karma which he will incur should he kill his cousins and his elders. But in truth, the lecture which Krishna gives Arjun is meant not just for Arjun, it is also meant for the later kings who followed and who actually perhaps founded Buddhism and Jainism. Had they studied the Bhagavad Gita, these religions would never have come about. But the Bhagavad Gita clearly denounces these philosophies. In the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna clearly says in text 7, Pravrittim cha nivrittim cha janana vidur asuraha. No saucham napi chacharo no satyam teshu vidyate. In explaining who is demonic and who is divine, Krishna points out that those who are demonic do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Why? They don't follow the Vedas. Therefore, they don't know what is to be done. They do not know what is not to be done. Neither cleanliness nor proper behavior nor truth is found in them. Clearly, here he is speaking of the Shramana philosophies, which predate Buddhism and Jainism. And he goes on to say, Asatyam apratishtam te jagad ahuranishwaram aparaspara sambhutam kim anyat kama hetukam. This is chapter 16, text 8. They say that this world is unreal, that there is no foundation to this world. There is no God who is in control. It is produced purely out of desire and has no cause other than lust. So this Bhagavad Gita clearly is against Shramana philosophies. And it has gathered, Krishna has gathered within this Bhagavad Gita all the philosophical astika darshanas so that all philosophers following Astic philosophies and the Vedas will come under its shelter and its umbrella. In a country where the language changes every 500 miles, where indeed the deity that they worship also seems to change every 500 or so miles, where every village has its Gram Devta or Gram Devi. The Bhagavad Gita, spoken by Lord Krishna, is the Lord's injunction to the nation to unite under the Astic philosophies and worship Him. So the Bhagavad Gita is very unique. And you will find that as you study the Bhagavad Gita, much of the Bhagavad Gita gives you different perspectives, but all of them leading to the same conclusion. And what do we mean by leading to the same conclusion? The uniqueness of the Bhagavad Gita is that it contains Vedic ritual, it contains Upanishadic knowledge, and not only does it contain Vedic wisdom and Upanishadic knowledge, but it contains pure devotion of the highest order as the ultimate conclusion of existence. And the Bhagavad Gita thus is the central text for all those who truly wish to understand what our religion is all about. People talk about various other philosophies also that have arisen. And these other philosophies that have arisen are not connected truly to the Vedas. The Vedic philosophies are these six darshanas. And these six darshanas, in one form or another, are reflected entirely in the Bhagavad Gita. Although Krishna does talk about Brahman, which is the foundation, the universal ground of all creation, Krishna also points out that Brahman is but the reflection that comes from the Supreme Lord. In chapter 14, text 27, Krishna declares, Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya yavyasya cha shashvatasya cha dharmasya sukhasya aikantikasya cha. So Krishna declares, I am the foundation of the formless Brahman, the immortal and the imperishable, the foundation of eternal Dharma and unending divine bliss. Brahmano hi pratishtha aham, pratishtha, foundation, the basis. And Krishna says, I am that foundation from which Brahman emanates. This is elaborated on in the Bhagavatam. In the Bhagavatam, it is declared Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yaj jnanam advayam brahmeti parmatmeti bhagwaniti shabdyate. That God may be realized in three ascending levels of God realization. The first level is Brahman. This is the God realization of the Jnani. It's like you're sleeping in your room at night, and in the morning, you wake up and say, hey, the sun has entered the room. But it's not the sun that has entered the room, sunshine has entered the room. So it is the sunshine that has entered the room, and thus you say the sun has entered the room. So Brahman is like the sunshine that emanates from God. And we are but a particle of the sunshine. When we sit in deep meditation and look within our hearts, we see the divine in the form of Paramatma. It's like you have woken up in the morning and sunshine has entered your room. But when you go to the mirror, you can see a reflection of the sun. And that reflection of the sun is that reflection in your heart, which is known as Paramatma. And lastly, when you go to the window and you look out of the window and see the sun, and see the sun shining in all its glory, that source of the sunshine, that source of the Paramatma or the image in the mirror of your heart is known as Bhagavan. And this Bhagavan who is inconceivable, this Bhagavan who is unmanifest, this Bhagavan who is inconceivable and ineffable, for the sake of his devotees, he manifests with a human form. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bharata abhyutanama dharmasya tadatmanam srijami aham. So whenever there is a rise in irreligion and a decline in religion, at such times Krishna says, I do appear. Please understand this most important point. And this most important point is that the Lord appears in this world so that you may understand him. Yes, you may say that Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha duskritam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Yes, he comes to deliver saintly people. Yes, he comes to finish off the evildoers. And thus he comes to establish the principles of religion again and again and again. But the important point here that you must remember is Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvata tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sarjuna. That those who understand the divine nature of his appearance and activities at the time of leaving their body return to him and never return, never come back to this world. So the most important thing is, as long as we can remain in this world like most people, centered around ourselves, we will be constantly exposed to suffering. But we can When we can transcend this self, when we can annihilate this self, when we can rise beyond this self, we will find peace. And the way to do that is by remembering God and forgetting self. You cannot remember a God who is without form. You cannot remember a God who is unmanifest. You cannot remember God who is inconceivable. क्लेशोदिक्तरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तसक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्त ही गतिर दुखम देहवद्भिर्वाप्यते. Those who are insistent because they're attached to worshipping God without form, their life is full of misery. It's a path full of sorrow. But Krishna says that those who worship me in this form as Lord Shri Krishna, Maya Veshya Manoyamam Nityayukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayopetas Te Me Yuktatmo Mataha. So it is so important to worship God in this form as Krishna and to follow the philosophies which he has taught in the Bhagavad Gita, because this philosophies or philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita is an inclusive synthesis of all the Hindu philosophies which are astic, which follow the Vedas. It naturally leads to moksha, but the focus is always on dharma. That if you follow dharma appropriately, then automatically artha, kama, and moksha will come your way. But if you are adharmic, if you abandon the world, if you renounce your duties, if you give up your job or your profession or your responsibilities, you'll get only sorrow. Sanyasastu mahabhavo dukkham aptuma yogatah yoga yukta munir brahma na chirena adigacchati. So Krishna wants you to do your job, your duty, fulfill your responsibilities, fulfill the purpose of your creation in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to God, remembering Him and forgetting yourself. Yatah pravrittir bhutanam yena sarvam idam tatam swakarmana abhyarchaya siddhim bindati manavaha. And each person, by the performance of his God-given duties, in a spirit of sacrifice to the all-pervading Lord, will attain perfection. So Bhagavad Gita contains all the philosophies of the Vedas within it, and it contains them harmoniously blended in a beautiful synthesis. And it demands that you worship Krishna or you worship God in the form of Krishna. And by worshipping Krishna and remembering Him in a manner so that you forget yourself, you will find peace, perfection, and the supreme destination. He is in your heart and He is leading you onward towards your destiny. You are only seated in a machine made of material energy. Simply surrender into Him, and by His grace, you will attain the supreme. I will pause here. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Yes, any questions? Yes? No one has any question?